Hello, everyone. Mark Helton here. Just want to make sure you can hear me all right. If you can, please just put something in the chat box there. Just go ahead and type in something, anything at all. We're going to be starting here in just a moment. I've got a couple of quick things I want to cover before we do get started. Awesome. Glad to hear you can hear. Great. So before we get started, guys, first off, let me just tell you how the format of this is going to work. We're going to be doing these every single day for the every business day for the next 20 days. And we'll probably repeat that after these 20 days if things go well. And by the way, I do foresee them going well. But anyways, what we're going to be doing each day is we're going to be doing a deep dive into a specific area of the system. So, for example, today we're going to be talking about the SMS area of our system. And that gives us the opportunity to really spend a little bit of time talking about each individual feature and how they're supposed to work and, how to set it up and some of the ideas that we have, here in the office about certain things, maybe some things that we've tested, just, a little bit of, we're going to give you a little more color on things versus just like looking at a looking at a product knowledge training video, right? This is a little bit more in detail than that. Now, with that being said, I do want to make sure everybody here understands that we don't want to get off topic. If you are here and you want to talk about something that's off topic, we may answer those questions at the end of the initial training, right? So today, for example, we're talking about text and you have some specific questions that are outside of that. Maybe you want to talk about something on email or something like that. That's okay at the end of it. And we'll tell you at the end if there are any questions that are outside of what we've talked about today. Go ahead and ask those now. Okay. So today, and oh, by the way, you're not going to just hear from one of us. So you'll hear from several people here at the office, and that's going to give you an opportunity to get different perspectives. Also, different people here are specialists in certain areas because they do things like, for example, today we have Melissa who is going to be covering the SMS area, and she's had a lot of firsthand experience working in the system. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to be seeing here is all based off of experience and not just, based off of technical how to do this and how to do that. All right. So without too much further ado, I want to go ahead and turn this over to Melissa. Melissa, if you just want to test your mic so we can make sure I hear you okay.
Okay, how about now?
I can hear you now. Perfect. Okay, guys.
Okay, and my screen.
Yep, we see your screen. We see your screen just fine as well. Also, we do have in the background here, the staff is here to help out. We've got Jasmine. So if you do have any questions and you type them into chat, Jasmine will be answering chat. So have fun and take it away, Melissa.
Hey, really quick question. Is there an issue with feedback from my speakers? Can you tell?
No, you sound fine.
Okay, just checking. Okay, well, good morning. Good Monday morning, everyone. Glad to have you all here. So we're going to be talking about the text messages predominantly today, the SMS tab here. We're going to try to keep it under this tab. All these things kind of interrelate with different parts of the system. So we'll try to keep it as focused on this as possible. But we're just going to go down this tab and talk about the functionality of all these things. And at the end, if you guys have questions, I'll be more than happy to do my best to answer those. So I don't know how many of you guys have had the opportunity to use text messaging in our system very much. It's probably one of the most underused features that we have, in my opinion. I think it's a great thing, a great method for communicating with others, and I'd certainly like to see us be able to use it just a little bit more. So without further ado, this first tab right here where it says Manage Broadcast SMS, this gives you the ability to broadcast a text message, a single text message, and versus this one down here that says Broadcast Campaign and Follow-up. Just kind of want to explain the difference between these two really quickly, is that the Broadcast Campaign and Follow-up actually, hold on 2 seconds, give me just a second. Can you all hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so as I was saying, the difference between these two tabs, this first one allows you to do a single text message, whereas the second one down here allows you to actually do a broadcast and a follow-up to that broadcast. Now, the good thing about the follow-up part of this broadcast is that when people respond to a text message, you will have the ability to see future follow-ups. So depending on which one you're going to be doing, we typically always just use this one in the office just because it allows you to do a single broadcast. And if you decide later you'd like to add some more, you have the ability to do that. So typically we just use this, but we also have this other feature here as well. So the setup on these are pretty similar. So pretty basic stuff. You'll do your title, pick your group, and you'll want to make sure that you actually have leads in the group that you do pick. And that has to do with the batching, which we'll talk about in a second. But also you have the ability here with tags that you can actually select leads that have a certain tag connected to them. Once again, tags is kind of something else we'll be talking about later. If you don't know how to use that, it's something that's going to require a little bit more in-depth explanation in the future. We also have the ability to skip leads with certain tags, so a lot of flexibility here on how you want to message people. Have to pick a from number. As you see here, I happen to have all these numbers purchased in the system. And if you have a number in the system that's purchased, you can basically pick any number that you have, with one exception, and that is on the conversation campaign, which we'll talk about more in a minute. This one is pretty exclusive, so you can't really, if you assign a phone number to your conversation campaign, that's basically all you can use it for. So you can also assign multiple numbers, which I don't know if anyone here has used that feature just yet. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm getting some feedback. Sorry about that. But the reason we have added this is, or the way that the assign multiple numbers works is you can actually pick, hello? You can actually pick multiple numbers to use for your campaign. And this will rotate between these numbers as you're going through them. So if I were to do this, and I actually set my, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this allows you to assign multiple numbers, and it'll rotate through them as your throttle is set. So if you set your throttle at, let's just say 100 every 15 minutes or 100 every 60 minutes, this is actually going to, every 60 minutes, it'll do 100 from this number, 100 from this number, and 100 from this number, and it'll just rotate until you're out of data. Also depending on how you set your throttle. So here you can obviously choose a template, or you can type in your own, whatever you prefer. Then you would also assign it to a member. If you don't assign it to a member, then you won't actually have the ability to have this person access or have change or edit this campaign. So it's kind of up to you what you want to do with that. You don't have to assign it to a member, but it certainly is ideal. I'm sorry. Just making sure that everybody's got their mic off. For some reason, I'm getting some feedback again. Okay, so after you choose your member, if you want to assign it to one, you would just click your disclaimer, click save. You can also send a test if you're using tokens, for example, in your text message, which we have the ability to do based on whatever you have available. So if you have a first name, you wanted to add that in here, you're able to do that. Okay. And once you do that, it will populate whatever you have entered here. So if you don't have, your data doesn't have first names on all of it, I generally recommend not using this. You can also use the alternate tokens, but again, that kind of gets off into another area of the system that we're going to be getting into later this week, so I don't want to go too far into it or get too deep into it. So right here, multiple tokens you can use. We also have something called spin text, which is also kind of a cool feature. And can be kind of confusing to people. But what this will do is you can actually enter 3 different words here if you want to kind of change things up so that you're not being totally uniform with your text messages. This is always a good thing to do, like just to keep things more personalized and more specific. It just gives you the ability to not be just sending the same message out over and over and over again. We've seen this work really well. I'm trying to think of an example where I could actually use this so you could see better how it works rather than just these things we
Actually,
have.
I'm going to jump in here, even though I planned on not doing it, because I want to make sure that everybody understands really the reasons behind why these features that you're talking about. So, so first off, let's talk about scroll up just a little bit, Melissa. Let's talk about the broadcast. I'm sorry. Whoops. Yeah, the assign multiple numbers. Okay. And then let's talk about the spin text kind of in working together. Okay. So the reason why we are giving you the ability to send a broadcast from multiple numbers and giving you the ability to do a little bit more personalization of each individual message is because the different carriers out there, and we're not talking about just, like in, well, it's going to happen countrywide. It's happening throughout the United States, and it's also happened in Canada. But basically, what's happening is any long code text messages that they receive, the carrier receives, they're kind of looking at them to see if they are a marketing message. And if you send more than the same message, more than one of the same message from a specific phone number, then that kind of throws up a red flag, which will cause them to throttle you or block your messages. Okay. Now I think what we found, Melissa, what was the magic number? Was it 25?
I have actually found it varies.
Okay, so
It's not an exact science.
right. So for those of you that are familiar with email providers and how they have spam filters set up to where they'll block, spammers, basically the same type of thing is starting to happen with phone companies with the text messages. Okay, so the reason why we have the multiple from numbers and the spin text, which Melissa is messing around with there right now, is so you can actually make each message more unique and kind of get past those filters. Okay, so basically, what spin text is, you could see here she's added 3 different variations of a greeting. So she's got the first name of the person, which would personalize that message. Every single message would have a different first name, provided that the contact that you have or the contact that you've loaded has a name. So that would be unique. And then after that unique piece of content, she has another unique piece of content, which is a greeting. Hi, good morning, hello. Now, obviously, we're sending this out in the morning, so it makes sense to say good morning. But if you're sending out a message in the afternoon or the evening, you probably wouldn't want to say that. But the point of this is now you could say, John, hi, just wanted to, and then you can add more spin text into this message. So the point of this really is to give you the flexibility that you need to make sure that your messages won't be stopped or blocked from the carrier, and you'll be able to keep getting your messages out. Now, what I've heard so far, and this is kind of, I think, the consensus from all of the different carriers, is that you can only send 200 text messages per phone number per day. So if you're going to send out a large campaign of, let's say, more than 1,000 messages in a day, well, actually more than 200 messages in a day, you're going to want to have multiple numbers. So basically what I would do is I would say, okay, if I have 1,000 numbers that I'm going to send a blast out to today, then I'm going to take that 1,000, divide it by 200, which is what, 5,
Yeah,
right?
5. I was gonna go with, yeah.
I was going to say 50 for some reason. Boy, my math is not working this morning. But yeah, take 5, and that's how many phone numbers that you will need to purchase to send out your broadcast from.
Now, that's what I was gonna say. Ideally, here we're looking at 600 messages would be kind of what we'd be looking at.
Yeah, so you've got 3 numbers here. So 3 numbers would be 600 messages, right? If you needed to send out more, then you just need to have more phone numbers. Now, here's the thing. It's not required in our system for you to do this. You just run the risk of the carriers blocking your phone number.
Yeah, and as I
Um,
was saying too, it's not an exact science, so sometimes it may not happen, but it's just maximum deliverability. I think probably makes the most
yeah,
sense.
Alex asked if the system lets us know if the text message is delivered. That's actually something we're putting in that probably will come out in the next 30 days. We're adding a new feature to the system, which is going to make a lot of changes to the way everything works. So we just want to wait until after that's done before we do that. Does SpinText work for email messages? No, we don't have it set up to do that for email, and that's just because, we're not trying to make a utility to bypass well, the answer is no. We haven't done that yet for email, but we could, get into that in the future.
Okay.
All right. Well, I just wanted to give some clarity or a little bit more color on that because, just browse or just kind of, glossing over why we've done that doesn't necessarily give everybody the kind of understanding that I want
Full
you to
depth and
have.
comprehensive, yeah,
Yeah, like
perspective on it.
it's a very powerful feature. There's no other service or software that you have access to that would be able to be able to do this, which means that you couldn't do this any other way besides through Hot Prospector. So basically, if you're going to send out these broadcast messages, consider how many numbers you're sending out to. Make sure that you have proper amount of outbound numbers. Make sure you're using some SMS spin text in there, and yeah, personalize those messages. All right, sorry, Melissa.
That's okay. And I'm in a slightly different part of the office, and believe it or not, there's people outside of my part of the office that are painting and banging on the building. So if you can hear that, I apologize. It's kind of loud for me,
We
but
don't
I think
hear it.
okay, good. Okay, so where were we? So basically put your message here. Be able to set your throttle. Now, the way your throttle works is we only have these increments, right? You can do every 15, every 30, or every 60. And the maximum allowable per increment is going to be 500. Pretty simple stuff here. This is across the board for all of your texting. I think the maximum messages are 500 and the max is 60, or the max is 15. Minimum would be 60, and minimum here would be 25. So obviously requires some simple math for you to based on, what you want to send out, how quickly you want it to go out. And it's another thing to bear in mind with this is that people will oftentimes respond to text messages. So don't send them out faster than you plan to respond to them if you plan to do it manually. Excuse me. So depending on what you plan to do to respond, just keep that in mind. Also, send immediately is scheduled. I don't believe we have the send immediately option available when you're doing the broadcast and follow-up, but that is something that you have an option to do here. When you're scheduling it, schedule the time, pretty simple stuff. We don't have enabled here the constraints on this particular campaign, which is something that we primarily use on the broadcast and follow-up, but I will go over that shortly. If you're going to schedule it, pick your date, your time. Also, another thing to bear in mind, don't forget, always a good idea to make sure you're set in the right time zone for wherever you need to be sending this broadcast from. Obviously, if you're on the East Coast, be cognizant that you're not set your time zone to the West Coast and vice versa. So typically we say not to be sending text messages out. I think it's like 9 o'clock is kind of our standard earliest time, depending on what you're doing. And I don't like having them go out after 6 p.m. personally. I think we might have had some campaigns that ran a little bit later that were slightly, just depending on who you're targeting, or what list you're working with, rather, would probably be a better way to put it. I just think of what you would find acceptable to be communicating with people, what time of day is appropriate. But definitely, we generally say we don't do it before 9, and I don't like doing it after 6 p.m. personally. So once you're done, pick your day, hit save, and let's see if this will work for what I have here. I probably have to fill in some more information to actually be able to show you this, so hold on a second. I don't have to fill that out. Oh, look at that, reset this. I'll just pick a few more numbers for the sake of example. Okay, and just do this. Send this tomorrow, so that'll give me time to cancel it. And I'm not going to assign it to a member. Also required. If you don't have a group, then it won't know who to send the messages to. So you got to have a group, and you should have leads in it ideally. And that would probably be the situation here.
Melissa, too, just one thing I wanted to ask, and I think some people are probably curious about this. So you covered the tags here on the
only briefly,
group.
Yeah.
Right. So can you go into a little bit more details of how those tags, how that would work?
Well, for the skip lead tags, that is going to skip if you pick it. Like if I have a lead that has this tag associated with it, or this tag associated with it, as you can see, these are both test tags. It will skip those tags. And this one should actually be sending to those tags specifically. If my understanding of that is correct. You could correct me if I was not, but that is my understanding of that. This is certainly something that I think is really handy that we don't particularly use enough, but it gives you a lot of flexibility in segmenting your campaigns. So if you need that ability to really segment stuff and send things to the right place, make sure the right people are getting the right messages, then that's definitely a really useful feature to use. Sorry guys, just a second. Okay, well, I can't submit this unless I have people in a group, which I know I do. I'm gonna have to go check. Bear with me here. Okay, well, I guess I'm going to be adding myself as a contact really quick. Let's use this group. Okay. Okay, let me just make sure I have all of this filled out. You guys will notice that this is very important. Obviously, it can't work if we don't make sure that's all filled out. Okay, I'm going to remove that because we're not using that. All right, we did it. Sorry about that. Yeah, so if you don't have leads in your group, it won't allow you to schedule it. And the reason that happens is because really, your batches will be created shortly after you actually create it. And if you go adding people after you've created it, then it won't batch them in with the rest of your campaign. So it needs to know who it is going to be sending to before you schedule it. Obviously,
talk about the batching. How soon before the campaign launches
does it batch?
The batch, yeah.
Usually it's about 15 to 30 minutes. Right,
Is it
just
just 15 minutes or is it 30? I don't think it goes 30 minutes out. It's supposed to be like 15 minutes before.
it's pretty tight. So yeah, it's closer to 15, sometimes less.
Right. So if you have a list of 1,000 people
Hmm.
and you've got it throttled, then it's going to segment. Now, is it going to batch out the entire 1,000 at once, or does it just take the first part of that 1,000
It will batch it all out
people?
at once you actually put it here, but at the same time, and this is, remember, we're only doing the managed broadcast, so we're not using the follow-up yet. So the unsubscribed records would not be, or the people who have responded or unsubscribed or whatever are not going to come into play on your managed broadcast the same way as it will here.
On a
Um,
follow-up. Got it.
yeah.
Okay, so I
Okay.
got ahead of you. Sorry.
That's okay. But as you'll notice here as well, this is basically it. Once we actually do one of these campaigns, a broadcast and follow-up, you'll have the ability to actually edit and add additional messages. And you can add additional messages after your first, after you schedule your first campaign. So let's take a look at that before we go into the autoresponder really quick. There are some slight differences here between the two. Okay, so this one, we'll also just call this one a test campaign, and I'm going to use the same group, which will be the one that we have leads in. Okay, as you see here, the tags feature is also available, skipping and utilizing. Also, assign multiple numbers is available, which we've already covered, so I'm not going to go into it any further. I'll just put in test here. Again, you'll see you have all these options, nothing different here. Now, here's the one thing that we don't have on the other with the managed broadcast, the time constraints. So let's talk about the time constraints a little bit because this is pretty handy, and I recommend that you use it, especially if you're doing larger broadcasts for which you would definitely want more than one number, which I only have selected. So for here, you could specify specific days that you want to block, and this is how you would enter it. As you can see, year, month, day, comma, year, month, day. So, or also here the 2018 9/20. So it's giving you examples on how you would enter a day. If you want to block a day, just any specific day out in the future, it could be 3 months from now. Do you know what I'm saying? Also the from time and the to time, very good things that we were kind of talking about on the other one, just for your own, being aware of. Here you can actually set this up to where it will constrain this to where I could say I don't want anything to run before 10 a.m. and I don't want anything to run after, let's say, 2 p.m. And the cool thing about this is you can actually use this as a throttling mechanism, or you can just use it to make sure that your messages are only going out at certain times a day when you want those messages to go out. But you can also use it, as I was saying, as an additional throttling mechanism, which allows you to use a list of, let's say, 2,000 people and you only wanted to send 200 messages a day. Well, if you were going to do that at 15 every 25, this would be about 100 an hour. So if we wanted to just send, let's say, 200 a day, I would set this to, I think, 12 p.m. You have to figure the first one goes out at 10, the next one goes, I think, so it'd actually be 11:45, I think, just after, a hair after would probably be safest. If you're using it as a throttling mechanism, and I don't know if that totally makes sense. So it's kind of one of those things you have to count out because it's 100 an hour, but at the same time, your 10 o'clock message is going to be your first throttle, your first drop at 25. So if you do 10 o'clock will be 25, 10:15 will be another 25. So by the time you get to 10:30, that's another 25. When you're at 11, you're actually hitting 120, 125. So that's why I say 11:45 technically would be exactly 200, but just bear that in mind that right on the hours when it's going to start the first one. Okay, you can also block down here as days if you want to block Saturday and Sunday, if you wanted to, use the control key to kind of be very specific. We have also included all major holidays here in the United States. Some of them might be days off, some of them might not be. I don't think Halloween is in Nevada, but it's not anywhere else, I don't think. So after you do this, you do not have the ability on this one to do scheduled immediately, but you can certainly pick a time, and you could do it. I don't like to do anything closer than 5 minutes. I mean, if you have to have it going out now, give it 5 minutes. Give it at least 5 minutes to actually go ahead and process it. That's just kind of a rule of thumb, but you don't have the ability to do it any sooner than that. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the 26th, although I guess I'm the only contact here. We'll put this down for, and if I use these as constraints and I scheduled this at 8:15, it would not go out until 10. Something else to keep in mind. So even if you do that, it won't work until 10 o'clock. This one I'm just gonna say 10:30, okay? And I can also assign to members if I want. Click here, see if I have all this filled out. Also, you should see we had the spin text and the and tokens. You can add tokens and spin text as well in this particular campaign. I think it's across all segments of our text messaging you can do that with. So as you see here, it's a little bit different than what we had going on in this particular area, because here you have the ability to actually add your follow-ups now. So you can add as many as you like. This one, you just pick your day, pick your time, and if we have the constraints set up, don't forget, if you have your constraints set up, make sure you're picking stuff that's within your constraints, or if you schedule it earlier, it won't go out until that time. Also pick your templates. I have to pick a date and time if I'm going to actually do this. Let's do this for, as you see here, I think I just sent these out on the same day, so you can even, you could do multiple texts in the same day. Your sent log, this says it's waiting. This will be the batching if you want to review it after it's closer to when it actually send. And then this just kind of gets into what Mark had been bringing up. The reason that the batching on these is a little bit tight, we try to make it as close to the actual send time as possible, mostly because if you have multiple batches here, which you're not going to see anything on these yet, if somebody responds to this campaign based on the phone number, then the system will not send them the second message. So if I were to receive this message and I texted back or I called in, they will not receive the second message, the follow-up message, whether the second message be, half hour later or a day later or a week later, I will be removed from that follow-up. So that's how the broadcast and follow-up specifically works. And that's why you'll see oftentimes on these follow-up batches, I don't know for any of you who've used this feature yet, if you've got, like say 100 every 60 minutes going out and you've got a follow-up going out, you'll notice that some of the later batches won't have the same quantity. So rather than having the full 100 available there, you might see it says 99 or maybe 87 or just a lesser number, because some of those people are responding and the system is accounting for that and removing those people who respond from those batches before the actual batch sends. So it's pretty good about that. It's not hit and miss. I mean, I'm saying the system's pretty good that it does that. And you can add as many as you like. There's no limit, obviously, to the amount of follow-ups that you can schedule or send. So that's the difference between these two campaigns. Like I said, we primarily use this one, but this option is available to you. So you have that option if you like. Also for the autoresponder, so we're going to try to get into the autoresponder and the conversation campaign before 9 o'clock today. Let's go ahead and take a look at the autoresponder first. So the difference between one major difference between the broadcast and the autoresponder to bear in mind is that when you're setting up a broadcast, you want the leads available in the correct group before you start. Because as we were talking about here, you're going to be connecting a group to your campaign. See right here, the groups on this one. I happen to have app test on there. If I connect the same, you have to connect this to a group when we create this, okay? So I'm trying not to be obscure here, but I'm just going to say, call this one test, and I have to connect this to a group. But if there are leads in this group already, then they will not receive the text messages that you're about to set up. So the idea behind the autoresponder is that you're going to add people to the group, and as they are added to that group, they receive the messaging sequence and the messaging campaign in that time. So as this is any kind of live leads that you're working on, or things that are just basically messaging cadences that you want to go out, this is what you'll want to use. It's something that's set up to go, it's a drip campaign. So you're going to connect it to a group, obviously something that would be connected to the campaign. A lot of times you'll connect these to voicemails and emails if you want it to be comprehensive and have all of these different elements to it. So you'll be using the same group likely if you want to have the same messaging cadence be sent to all the same people via voicemail, text message, and email. You'll be picking the same group. So for this one, I'm going to go with business contacts. There's nobody in this group at this time. So skip leads, again, also available. We kind of covered this one already. This one is future follow-ups. So a lot of people have questions on future follow-ups. What does this mean? So whereas in the manage broadcast and follow-up, if somebody responds, they do not get the follow-up message. In this particular campaign, you can opt to say, yes, I want them to get follow-up messages. So for example, if you're communicating with like your clients just to kind of, keep in touch with them, especially for whatever reason you would be doing that, you have a cadence set up that it's not dependent on their response so much as you're just trying to inform them on a regular basis, you might say yes, as in if they respond, I want them to get the next message. That's all this means. So a lot of people have questions about this. That's what that means. I'm going to go with no. Most often I use no, but there are plenty of situations where you may say yes. You can also assign multiple numbers here, so up to as many as you like. Your throttling, this is really helpful. Basically, if you're going to be adding people to this as it's a drip campaign, you might be adding 1,000 at a time. You might be adding, 5 at a time. It just depends on the specifics of your campaign. If you're going to add 1,000 records at a time, you have the ability, and it's wise to do this, to slow it down. You don't want to send out 1,000 texts all at once. As a matter of fact, you won't have the ability to do so. Maximum you could do is 500. But as we were saying, ideally, you'd want to keep this at 2, just to make sure that you're matching your rotation with your numbers. Every 15, every 30, every 60, whatever is suits your needs. Obviously, again, not too fast that you may need to respond if that's something that is part of your campaign. Here it would go out, basically we would have, this would send out 800 an hour. That's how we have it set up here. I wouldn't want to do anything more than that. But again, it just depends on how many you're adding, and you don't have to, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be whatever it is that you're adding to this group to launch these messages. Okay, again, we have the time constraints ability here, which is also very smart for a autoresponder campaign. The reason being is your autoresponder campaign allows you to set up multiple messages that go out in segments or increments, which this might be easier to explain once I actually have the page in front of me. So let's just go ahead and set these up, these constraints, and then I'll kind of explain the constraints after we get to that portion of it. Just a second. I'm also going to say 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'm going to skip weekends just because, and I'll probably skip all major holidays if I was going to be doing this for a long period drip campaign, like if I was planning on having this implemented for all new clients or something. That's probably what I would do. And I think I have all this stuff filled out. Okay, so now this gets into the intervals. So this will be a little bit easier to explain what I was saying about the constraints. So especially when it comes to the days that you're constraining. The reason being here, all you're doing is selecting intervals. You're not actually scheduling a specific day. So you can't look at your calendar and say, okay, well, I'm not going to schedule it to go out on Saturday. If that happens to be, 6 days from today and you put a 6 here, then it's going to go out on Saturday if you don't have your constraints in place. So very important that you set those up if you're doing a long-term customer nurturing kind of a campaign where you're going to be communicating with people over a long period of time to keep their attention on, on your business essentially and the things that you have to offer. So oftentimes people start with a 0, and that 0 means it's going to go out immediately. And immediately means within the time constraints. So obviously, if you add a lead to this particular campaign at midnight and you have your constraint set up as you should, it will not go out at midnight. In fact, the system is set up to where it should not be sending messages that late anyway. It's kind of a fail safe, but let's just say that for certain you shouldn't be, shouldn't have to worry about it if you have your constraints in place. So that's why I always say you should use those when you're setting an autoresponder. Oftentimes, if you would prefer it to go out at a certain time in the day, on the first message, we'll say just start with day 1, and that will actually allow you to add a scheduled time. So, and then you'll have to schedule a time at some point during the day for the remainder of your messages past the instant one, which is 0. And you don't have to use an instant message. You could just start at 1 if you like. That just means that the leads you add on day 0 will not be sent till the following day. So if this is kind of confusing, I do apologize. And, I'll be looking forward to taking any of your questions after the fact. So make sure you write them down. For this one, I'm going to go with 0, that I'm not going to be able to schedule it. This will be my first text. And you can also use your spin text here and tokens. Sorry, I was like, where'd the tokens go? Any tokens you like, spin text can be added here. if you're using 0, be cognizant of the fact that, it might be afternoon or morning, so just be aware of that. Okay, same thing here. You can add as many of these as you like. Let's just say I'm going to send this one at noon. And so on and so forth. The only thing that, then let me just verify this really quickly. Okay, let's try. Okay, just wanted to verify that before we actually tried it. But as you can see here, you can also set up multiple messages on the same day if you prefer to do that. So as far as I remember, if I'm not mistaken, you can't do multiple instant messages. Let me just see if we ever updated that. Apologize. Yeah, so the only thing you can't do is multiple instant messages, but you can do multiple messages on the same day even, which is kind of nifty to be aware of. And like I said, that you can do as many as you like here. There's no limit. You could do, out to a year if you like, send one a month or whatever works for whatever it is that you need to do for your communications with your clients. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of these. Oh, yes. And as far as the batching goes here, this one, as I said, this campaign launches as you move records into the associated group. So, or move, I should say import, whatever method it is that you're using. I think that importing is the way that we prefer it to be done, because when you do move leads from a group to this group, if you're moving like 1,000 of them, it's kind of a little slow on the system, because I think it counts them all individually, which is not a huge deal. But you can move them, or you can import them directly, whatever method it is that you're using to actually add leads to this. We have lots of ways that you can be adding leads. You could be doing this through a phone call. You could be doing this through a lead form. You could be adding leads to this through any number of ways. You could use the API settings. I mean, there's lots of things you can do to actually be adding leads to a nurture campaign or whatever your campaign is that you're using to communicate with people. So lots of flexibility on that. Really useful tool to keeping in touch with people or your clients, or whatever your campaign is specifically. And I was thinking about, does anyone have any questions regarding the autoresponder before we move on to the conversation, just because the conversation is kind of a whole nother ball of wax. I don't know if Jasmine's there. Is there anything that I should address? Take a look at your questions. Okay, I don't see any hands over here, so. All right, well, let's just keep the questions till the end then, and I'll go ahead and move on to the conversation campaign. Okay, so this is a little bit complex, and it looks like we've got about 15 minutes to cover this. As far as I just went to the archive. Yeah. There we go. We'll try to get through this in about 15 minutes, but this is a little complex, but it's a very cool campaign, actually. If you can implement this, I think it's probably one of the more underused features that we have available. I really like it, and I would certainly like to. There's a lot of ways that this could be used, but let's kind of go over how it works. So I'm just going to call this one test, since we have to fill these fields out. Now, the group that you're selecting here is going to be the group that leads are added to when they subscribe to this particular campaign. So this is not a broadcast, so it does not have to have, you don't have to have leads in the group when you're sending the campaign, because that's not how it works. This is just where they're going to be added to. Now, you could have this connected to an autoresponder, so there's lots of different things you can do with this, obviously. This is another method you could use to add people to an autoresponder, just depending on what your campaign is specifically. So I'm going to have them added here. I'm going to pick a phone number, which is, as I said, this is another thing to be cognizant of, is this is an exclusive phone number. You can't be using the phone number that you have selected for this campaign and anything else. So you're not going to see the same options when you click on this drop down as you saw on some of the other ones. For this one, I'm going to go with subscribe by. Okay, so if you click subscribe by SMS, this is going to allow them the ability to subscribe to the campaign via an SMS process versus this is subscribe by call. So if you have subscribe by call selected, this is how they're going to be added by caller ID versus by pressing a phone number. So whichever works best for you, this one is actually going to just take their caller ID and add them to the campaign, or versus this one they have to actually press in or enter their phone number to identify who they are. So this is a little bit easier for the caller, but if you want them to subscribe to potentially a different phone number, you have this option available to them. Also, this just allows you to select your greeting message. For here, we say MP3 only. You can always use the text-to-speech, but which is probably what I will do for the moment. But this is always a better option. Text-to-speech never sounds very good over the phone. So you would enter your message here, and it would be text-to-speech, or you would upload your greeting file. And something to the effect of, actually, this would probably be easier to explain it this way first. Yeah, so let's go through this one first. It'll be a little bit easier for me to just explain that one. So the subscribe keyword here, there's a lot of fields here that can be kind of confusing. So the subscribe keyword is a word that you select, and you can just enter it here, whatever you want it to be, although I do believe there are some exceptions to that. This is what we have for the unsubscribe keyword. So I would usually say it just depends. If you're doing a contest, maybe it would be enter, you'd have enter would be your keyword, right? Let's just say, or if you're having a sale, maybe, and you would want, it just totally depends on how you're using it. Usually you want your subscribe keyword to be something that's relevant to what you're talking about. And the user is going to text this particular keyword into the campaign to get themselves to start the campaign communications. So I'm going to just say enter, just for the sake of keeping this somewhat simple. Your confirm message is actually going to confirm for them that they are in the campaign, and your confirm keyword is also going to be different than your subscribe keyword. It's just going to be, this is the whole process of, you're confirming and giving them the chance to reaffirm that they are subscribing. Okay, so these are going to be different words. Your confirm message will follow at the end of your communications, but it's showing up here in the beginning of the beginning of the process. So before you do this, though, you have the ability. This is what I really wanted to get into, is you have the option to actually add these questions. So you'll have your keyword. They'll text the keyword, and as soon as they text their keyword, let's just say you wanted to collect some information from them. So you might say, "What is your name?" Just keep it simple. Okay, here, this is the field that is associated with this question. So whatever whatever the lead enters as a response to this question will be logged in this field, or whatever field you select. Here I'm going to select first name because that's what makes the most sense. And then over here under action, you have this, which we can use in the second one. So let's just say you wanted to say hi. Let's do this, insert field as token, previous answer. So now I just did this, hi, previous answer. That's just saying, what is your name is going to be entered here. Understand that? You can hit period, what is your last name? And then here you could obviously enter last name and so on and so forth. Then if you wanted to be really technical, which I wouldn't recommend doing this, you would say hi. This would not be wise, but you could use the previous answer selection. Obviously, you might not want to use it in conjunction with last name, but if you had a specific question, like a selling question, a business question, something that would make sense to the campaign that you're running, that you were collecting information in a custom field, you could say, for example, is, like, this would not be the best question, but And then if they answered that, let's say you had a custom field for that. Okay, I'm just going to use this for example, but it would be like, let's just say you had budget was your custom field, and so they would say, what is your budget? You could say, okay, enter the previous answer, or if that's, and then you could, confirm it, or you could say, not the best option here for how you would probably use it, but as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility with how you can use these previous answers and other things here. You can see you'll have to have your custom fields created before you actually engage in a campaign like this. It seems kind of complex, but once you actually use it and test it, it's really cool. It gives you a lot of options for collecting information, for adding certain data points to a lead that you might want to use in later campaigns. Information is power, obviously. So the more information you have about the people you're working with, you have a lot more things that you can do with that. But as I said, you will have to create your custom fields before you actually get engaged in this and setting this up, because you'll need them to enter stuff here that you might need. I think some of the ways that we have used this in the past, or we've tried to kind of, demonstrate this in the past, is really kind of a method of collecting information, as well as getting people acclimated with whatever it is that you're doing. It gets them to engage with with your business, which is probably one of the coolest parts, is you can actually have an automated conversation with somebody essentially without actually having to be on the phone. And truthfully, there's a lot of millennials that really like this option. They would prefer to communicate this way. So, once they get opted in and they're on board, this is an excellent way to actually be communicating with people as much as you can. I don't know how many questions you really want to add here without being excessive, but option is available for you. Once you actually get these things filled out, this is the subscribe keyword obviously is going to come first. The confirm message will come second. And, these messages are going to depend, the confirm message and the welcome message are going to depend largely on the nature of your campaign. So it's kind of difficult to write one without actually having an example in place initially. So I apologize for not having one thought out for you already, but these two messages will depend largely on the type of campaign that you're running and the things that you're going to say. Your unsubscribe message will probably be pretty standard though, and it'll, be something to the effect of, wait, that's the resubscribe message. Okay, so your unsubscribe message is going to be, let's say you can't use, okay, so stop, end, quit, cancel, or unsubscribe. Those are words you can't use. So I would usually say like, something like, I don't know, you could say exit. That would be an unsubscribe keyword. And that'll be something that this keyword is going to actually be used in either of these fields. You're always going to say, hey, let's say reply exit to unsubscribe, or reply exit to be removed from communications. Okay, so that's going to be one of those lines that you'll always kind of use, and it ties in to this word here. So if somebody sees your message and at the end of it you say reply exit to unsubscribe at any time, or to be removed from communications at any time, they're going to reply exit. If they do, this message is what they will see, and you will say, sorry to see you go, maybe something like this, to re-enter, just please text, and then let me just see here. Okay, so your resubscribe word, I would say, let's just say re-enter. Okay, I don't think that's even proper grammar, but now, so sorry to see you go, to re-enter contest, please text re-enter is a very basic example. Then you would just use this word here, so that if the system sees that this word has been entered, that is going to resubscribe someone, and then you'll have your resubscribe message here. It'll be, welcome back. And I've used this before to where if you want this person to get the line of questioning again from the beginning, you'll want to use, say, if your keyword is enter, you might even say, please text enter to restart, something to this effect, right? And then you'll also want to follow that up with something like that, or to unsubscribe, just something specific here. but you want to give them this exit word, this unsubscribe keyword in this message, even though they did just resubscribe, might seem a little redundant, but it's still important. And if they do this and they text enter, which is your subscribe word, it will actually take them to the start the questioning over again. And the cool thing about this particular system is that if I, as a lead, go through this questioning, these questions right here, and I do it more than once, it is actually going to change my messaging. Like if I were to enter a different name, it will update my information and my contact right here. So whoever the most latest thing that you enter in as a response to these questions will actually be updated. So at any time, your lead can be going through this, use this keyword again in the middle of questioning, and it'll start over for them if they need to re-answer or answer something differently. So be aware of that when you're using this, and you can use that to your advantage if you need to, but that also allows them to update their information very easily at any point in time. So another thing to keep in mind as you're using this, lots of flexibility there, very, very useful. And this obviously just allows your contact to be added automatically. And as I said before, you can connect this to an autoresponder campaign for, email, text, voice drops, to where when they're actually going through this process, they'll be done. They're basically entering themselves as a lead potentially to something, and you can communicate with them after you've finished getting them all set up here by having them added to a group that you have connected to an autoresponder, for example. So if they add themselves by going through that process here, I could be sending out a message the next day, the following day. I could be sending out a voicemail. I could be sending out an email connected with that. So it's another really useful method to get people entered into your system in a orderly fashion if that suits your needs. So, and I see that it's basically 8:57, so we're kind of out of time. Did we have any questions that I could go over or answer for anybody? See if I can pop out this chat box here. Okay. Scroll down to the bottom. Okay, so are there any questions that have not been answered or that I could particularly answer? It looks like you guys have all been doing a really good job with answering these questions. And I'm not really seeing anything here. Oh, see, just got a question that came up. That's a very good question. Where will this webinar be stored for future reference? I will get with Mark on that, and I'm sure that we'll have that sorted out for you. If he's still on, I'm not sure if he's even on still, but.
Melissa, there were talks that they were going to put it on the YouTube channel.
Oh, okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So basically, once we get the details of that, we will
Make sure everybody has it.
Yeah, why don't you guys make sure you come back tomorrow, because we could probably get that link set up for tomorrow or emailed out, whatever's easiest for us or what makes the most sense. I see we have another question here. The 200 SMS limitation, is that per number, per sub account? That's very specific, and that is my understanding that it's 200 to answer that question.
So the SMS is not actually like a limitation, Khaled. That is something that happens from the carrier side who's receiving the messages. So
it's more of a recommendation.
Yeah, it's more of a recommendation, and you want to make sure that you just try to do everything you can to stay as far below that limit as possible if you want to keep your delivery rate high and avoid being blocked by any carriers. And
yeah, like we were saying, it's not an exact science, and it's kind of one of those things that sometimes it does it, sometimes it doesn't. How do I reply to SMS? That's a good question I didn't even get into.
Go for it.
All right, so replying to text messages, this is a very simple thing to do. So right here, where it says zero new inbound SMS, if you have text messages here that have not been read, this number will actually not say zero, it'll probably have a 1 on it. But I'm gonna go ahead and click here. This is how you're gonna respond mostly, and I could probably even text in to the campaign just to show you an example. I just do this really quick. Okay, so anybody even who's looking at this, if you want to text either of these numbers, feel free to. I'm going to go ahead and do so right now, just to give you an example. Let's do 180 277 and 9884. Okay, so I just sent myself a text here at this number. I'm gonna go ahead and just refresh this quickly. I could be unsubscribed in here, which would be kind of funny, actually, if that's the case. 2779884. Did I get that right? Oh, there we go. Okay, so you see how the 1 is here? So you just click here. Very good. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Okay, so if I want to do this, click on here, this little orange phone. This gives you the ability to click send. There's your response, and you can return anytime and continue your conversation right here. Now, if you're actually, these little buttons are pretty handy, give you a lot of things that you can do. This allows you to actually view the contact directly. Copy move, so you could actually move this contact for, like if you're in the middle of a conversation, you want to move them somewhere else to a different group, to maybe a different, launch different sequences, or, if you have various things set up that allow you to do that, this is the option to do that. You can edit the contact, like these are click to call, pretty basic. Unsubscribe, something you definitely want to use when you need to. Go back. Opportunity settings are not something I'm going to get into today. It's kind of something that we'll be talking about later this week. And this will delete the conversation, which will go into your archive at that point. Okay. I think if there's anything else on this I need to cover. Oh yeah, and these often confuse people. So as you notice that message that I just responded to disappeared, and that's because I have this set to unread. If I click on all, you'll see that it will reappear. And if I wanted to, put this on all, I can see sent received as well. I'm gonna leave it on received though. Does that answer your question? I think that's kind of the most basic rudimentary response on it. It's really not that difficult. If this were to become a new text again and it disappeared, it would also reappear as soon as you got a new text if you had it limited to unread. So if you want someone to see these, by the way, quick side note, if you have a member responding to text messages for you, you have to just make sure that you have to have them selected on the inbound campaign. You do not have to have them selected on the SMS campaign that you set up over here, but these are connected to the inbound phone number, which is this number here. So if I have a member that I have signed in to say, like a staff member, let's just say that you have logged in responding to these, you just have to make sure that your member has access to this phone number. And I'm not going to get into this too much, but just that would be this number. When you're creating it, and I'm sure that they'll go over this later this week, just make sure your member's connected to that. Otherwise, they won't see these messages, and you'll be like, why can't you see anything in here? Kind of a side note. Let's see, what else do we have? What is that number? It's not exact science. Okay. What is that number? I know it's not exact science, but what is the amount of text we can go out per hour before possibly being flagged? Okay. I think Mark responded to that.
Yeah, so the answer to that question, Alex, and we've kind of covered this a few times, multiple ways. We do not know that number because it's not published, and that's probably for good reason, because if the carriers publish, hey, don't send more than 15 messages per hour or we're going to flag you, then people would probably just go to 14. So it's a constant battle, and that's just how it works, especially with even like email providers. It's the same thing. ESPs are going to they're going to have their own, everybody's going to have their own algorithms that they're running to determine, who they're going to block and what. But I think we're out in front of it. We've gotten a pretty good handle on it on our end. We haven't had too many problems with it. If you're a white label, you can go into your Twilio and check your delivery. If it's being blocked or anything like that, you can stop, or you can make adjustments to your campaign based off of, seeing any errors or blocks.
In Twilio.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Anybody else before we finish up here? I think that's it. I'm trying to think. I don't think there's anything else here that we really didn't get into. I mean, I didn't really get into the templates. This is also new. Should I talk about this really quick or no?
Absolutely.
Okay, so something that we have been working on or that we had wanted to add was the ability to use other unsubscribe keywords. So looks like we have some additional defaults here. I don't know if you're aware, but typically our standard unsub verbiage says reply unsub to unsubscribe, and that was kind of the only thing that our system recognized for a while. So we've actually added some additional ones in here. And you can add also, if you wanted to, write your own unsub language in your templates or in your campaigns. Now you have the ability to enter your own keyword, and the system will recognize that to unsubscribe leads. So
Yeah, so basically the thought behind that is sometimes you might get like, go jump in a lake, but more of a explicit version of that. And if you get that a lot, then you could just click on add that keyword, and it would automatically detect those kind of messages in bulk and remove them. So if you seem to be getting a certain thing over and over and over again on your response, which should be an unsubscribe, that gives you the ability to do that. And I think also, right, Melissa, you can add that from within the SMS conversation itself, right? So if you're inside responding to a conversation.
Oh, you mean up here?
Yeah. So if you're inside of a campaign, let's click on one of those messages.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, I didn't see that, what you were referring to.
Thought we had given put your mouse over the text. No, down in the response.
Oh.
Yeah. So that cancel. So if you mouse over the text, that little plus thing will allow you to say, oh, I want to add this as an unsubscribe keyword. So if somebody was saying, like go jump in the lake, you can mouse over that.
Yes, that's new. I didn't know that was even there. Let's learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see here. Tom asked, this is a notification. Yeah, you would still want to do that with Hot Prospector, Tom. Just go ahead and just hit support for this. This is a little bit too far outside what we're talking about here, and I don't want to confuse anybody.
Anything else? I think that pretty much wraps it up. Do you want me to?
I guess so. Yeah, that's it. Well, hey, everybody, I just want to say thanks for everybody who made it out to our first, I don't know, what were we calling this? Like Hot Prospector Academy. You're not going to get a college degree here, or you're not going to get like a certificate or anything, but, it is kind of like more of an advanced overview of everything. You want to try to make it out to all of these, especially if, Hot Prospector is a big part of your business, and I know a lot of people here, I recognize the names. I could see that a lot of you are some of our, Anna says you get a virtual gold star. Love that. You guys are our gold star users, if we had such a thing. All right, so thanks again for coming out, and we will see everybody again here tomorrow, same time. And who's talking tomorrow, Melissa? Any idea?
Tomorrow is Adam. He's going over integration, specifically Facebook.
Oh boy, tomorrow is Facebook integrations with Adam. I'm going to be going to that for sure.
And really quick, we did confirm that everybody will have this in their email, and then going forward, and then it will be on YouTube as well.
Cool. So we're going to send out a link to everybody every day of the replay. But you want to make sure you make it live still, because you're going to not be able to ask questions on the replay, just as a side note there. But you will get it out, and we'll also put it on YouTube, so you'll have it there. Great. Well, thanks again for everybody coming out, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good.